in that, but now I'm finding my value in other things. And so in that particular case, in politics. And that's just where our value becomes sort of a bit faulty or fragile, potentially even fractured. And I think that's where you see, culturally speaking, where we're at. We're fractured in many ways because we're building our identity around something other than the fact that we're fully loved by God in Christ. So to come to the State of the City project, just kind of to make this big leap out of what I shared about my past, the State of the City project we set up as an easy entry space for everyone who calls the Omaha Metro home to get in the game of seeing their city flourish. And we can speak about that for sure, but we tried to create a place where people can link arms around the mental well-being of the people in their city, the well-being of young people. We say we imagine a city where every child reaches their full potential, to see every neighbor matter and thrive, and then also to see our local churches or places of worship thrive. So.
Hello and welcome to the Threshold Podcast on iCode Media. Today I had a great conversation with Jed Mullenix, and we discussed principles of connecting communities. A lot about connecting specifically Omaha through churches and through betterment of our communities in Omaha. But I think there's so many principles that we can apply not only to our communities across the country, but to our practices in terms of our smaller communities that surround our practice. So please enjoy our conversation. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. The most common questions I get include, what ophthalmological codes or evaluation and management codes should I use? What ICD-10 codes do I need to bill with this CPT code? What CPT codes can be billed together and what can't? And my favorite, how do I manage a patient who has diabetes who comes in for a quote-unquote routine eye exam? These questions really highlight the confusion and uncertainty that serves as a daunting hurdle for providers, makes it more challenging for them to care for their patients and provide those patients with the best opportunity for a lifetime of ocular health and clear vision. That's why we built iCode Education for this specific purpose. Our mission is to provide optometrists with resources to help you understand disease states, revenue cycles, and billing and coding so that you can put that on autopilot and truly care for your patients. Check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. We've developed a premier billing and coding bundle that includes all of our billing and coding resources in one place. We also have a 10% discount code just for listeners of this podcast. Enter the coupon code EYECODEMEDIA22 at checkout. We'd love to work with you. Check out iCodeEducation.com. Hello, dedicated optometrists. Are you looking for a way to support your patient's vision and overall eye health? Let me introduce you to Vision Edge Pro, a visual performance supplement that stands out in our profession. Vision Edge Pro contains a balanced blend of mesozeaxanthine, lutein, and zeaxanthine in a 10-10-2 ratio. This combination has been scientifically shown to increase macular pigment density, which enhances visual performance, including contrast sensitivity and vision in glare situations. Additionally, Vision Edge Pro provides 300 milligrams of DHA and EPA, fulfilling the daily requirements for omega-3s as recognized by the leading health organizations. This ensures your patients receive the essential nutrients their eyes need for optimal health. Whether it's for everyday screen use, night driving, or enjoying the outdoors, Vision Edge Pro supports your patients in seeing their best. Recommend Vision Edge Pro for your patients today and help them achieve clearer, healthier vision. Contact your local MacuHealth representative for more details. Vision Edge Pro, because your patients deserve the best in eye health. Go to MacuHealth.com and use the coupon code PODCAST2024 at checkout for special discounts. Okay, so this in 2019, and if I'm good at anything, I've got good habits. So once I start something, I'm kind of diligent and I keep doing it. And really, I started doing it because I was having good conversations across the country when I would meet with different people. So I'd go and speak someplace and I would interact with a group of doctors, and they'd have me, a great story about the history of our profession or something that they were doing that was inspiring. And so I would come back and I would tell those stories to people, but I wouldn't do them justice. And so that's why I started just recording them. And, it brought me through the pandemic. Honestly, like I go back and listen to some of those episodes from 2020, like April 2020 and March 2020, and like the gravity in my voice, you could still feel it today. And then, the reality is like I've been able to have conversations with a lot of people that probably wouldn't give me the time of day. And it says nothing about them, but like how many times you say, hey, do you just want to talk for an hour? Most people are like, what else are we going to do? Like,
it's great.
So you just can reach out to people and pick their brains about things. So it's been great.
Fun. Love it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well,
I love it. And you've been hard at it for 4 years. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. That kind of, I think we're going to be a little bit circuitous in this conversation. I usually do an introduction after we have the conversation. So if I say something that, if we have a conversation that later on you're like, oh, Chris, we shouldn't talk about that, then just let me know. We'll swap it out.
Sure.
But I think when I think about, well, first of all, I got to start with Ted. So Ted, I've known Ted now for, man, I bet Lincoln was probably 3 years old. So I probably known Ted for 12 years or more. And, I look up to Ted a ton, and I hope that someday I'm as good of a human as Ted is. And so when he was in, I guess it was over a year ago now, because I recently saw him again, and I was asking him what he was doing. He was telling me kind of about the generalities of what you guys were working on in Omaha and trying to bring the city. And I'm probably going to butcher this a little bit, but bringing the city, building the community back in the city, that starts a lot in a lot of ways with leadership of different churches, different Christian churches. You have Protestants, you have Catholics, and there's ways that we a lot of times focus on our differences, but probably our differences are very small in comparison to our similarities. And so, I just want to talk about what's going on in the city, how we can look at kind of the principles that you're thinking about within building community, in Omaha, but how that applies to just general principles across the country and maybe even within our profession in optometry. So, Jed, thanks for being on, man. Tell me a little bit about all that. It's a long way to get to kind of what you're doing.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so within reach, I mean, you referenced Ted Pluggy. We say we're on, Jed and Ted's excellent adventure, and we've got a staff around us, but we have an incredible time together. And we feel like we're in the best business we could possibly be in, which is just to see our city flourish. We say we're at Within Reach, a catalyst for city flourishing, which simply means we've created space where the city and especially leaders in community business and the local church can come together, experience a sense of togetherness, be given something that will help improve or enhance, hopefully accelerate their leadership, and then give them outlets for sharing stories back in terms of what they're experiencing, whether it be in the marketplace, their local business, the community endeavor they're called to in a nonprofit, especially the local church, where they're seeing flourishing take place, where they're seeing, in your words, people learn their kind of call in humanity, a sense of identity, purpose, meaning, significance. People who are experiencing that they're loved, for the first time and are sharing their stories with us around that. People who are finding a sense of purpose in their community that they're called to, or they're learning how to be a great neighbor, or they're getting involved in local education, or they're in their unique kind of business space, just learning how to be a great employee. And so we get to sit at the center of that to bring leaders together around what we call our two things, city reaching and city renewal. We can go into that as much as you want to, but we have a unique kind of strategy that's going to take us over the next 10 years that hangs on those two things, city reaching and renewal. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're thrilled to say we're working with anywhere from 60 to 80 local churches across the metro, Protestant, Catholic, non-denominational, mainline denominational, everywhere in between, that really wants to see our city flourish. And that's the common denominator in Jesus that brings us together to the table to say, we love the place that we call home. How can we make it better?
Where did you see, what was the inspiration for starting this? Where did you see the problem or the disconnect when you're just kind of this needs to be done?
Yeah, so, Within Reach started prior to me coming to the Omaha Metro. So in 2016, a handful of leaders around the Metro said, We've seen a number of city networks built around, let's say, prayer. We've had prayer networks, or around unity. We've had networks that exist just to bring people together into the same space. Or we've had, for example, we had a festival in with the Lease Palau Association, who's a great partner of ours, probably 12, 14 years ago. And those networks sort of ebbed and flowed. And really, we always want to say we stand on the shoulders of the people who've come before us. Really, we track for about 3 decades of really dynamic work of people really laboring for unity, really serious about and focused on through prayer, inviting God to do what he may, and or really wanting to see people encounter their Heavenly Father in a way that connects with their heart. And so that was 2016. There were some leaders prior to me coming to the Metro. I had the joy of being able to join our board in 2017. We were a volunteer-run organization at the time, and we really were within reach, what would be known as a city-reaching organization. Our heart is to see every man, woman, and young person come to the realization that they were created for purpose, meaning, significance, and that they're loved by the Creator who made them. And so that's really the heart that Within Reach came out of. And then when in 2020, similar to what you were sharing about how those were very defining seasons for us, I was going through a bit of a career shift, and I was already on the board, but I was encouraged by someone on our team to consider maybe taking the reins for the first time as the first paid employee of Within Reach. I said yes, and those next kind of year and a half were very defining for us as an organization, because what started as a city reaching organization still is that, but we added this second part, which is reaching and renewal. So everything that I just described, but also this heart to see our city just be at its very best. So for people to thrive in the area of relationships and community, or physically, emotionally, spiritually, or socially, in relationships with those in their, or vocationally, to really thrive in their place of work, or educationally, and we can talk about that. We have a really strong emphasis on education in the city. And so we added that alongside. So now we say we're a city that's focused on city reaching and city renewal, and our heart is to stand at the intersection where we bring leaders together for that purpose.
How do you battle against, obviously one of the things you and I were texting about today is, I feel like, and I try not to get sucked in, but I'll tell you, Jed, I get sucked into, people who want to talk about things that I have a natural inclination toward, my beliefs. And so I understand my beliefs don't necessarily align with a lot of other people's beliefs. And so I think in that realm, we can be fractured. We can be pulled to listening to debates between Catholics and Protestants. And, I love to listen to them because I'm like, oh, I learned something there. I learned something from both sides. But ultimately that can be kind of divisive, right? And then you get even to politics, and so politics becomes even more divisive. And you've seen in our city recently just the different signs in different places, and people really identifying with sort of a side as opposed to like we're just a piece of humanity, in as you say, in God's image, name, and likeness, and like, why can't we be bound by that? What is so attractive? And I suspect it's somewhat evil. In fact, maybe a lot of evil, but so attractive of like, well, finding our tribes and then just gravitating to our tribes, as opposed to saying, listen, we're a big community, and we might have certain things that make us a little bit different, but like we ought to be working toward the same goals. And so I find myself battling that. How does that work, and what's your view of how to overcome that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It'd probably be good to give a little frame to kind of how my life was shaped as a leader.
Yeah.
Moving here from the East Coast, my life was greatly influenced from a distance by a leader named Timothy Keller. So he was in Manhattan, New York City, moved there in the mid to late 80s, planted a church called Redeemer Presbyterian. And really what you just shared was at the center of his message, which was brand new to me in my mid-20s, which is that all of us have a tendency to build our identity around something or someone other than our Heavenly Father, or who he's given us and revealed himself to be to us in Christ. And so we can rebuild our lives around anything. We can make the core of our being and our pursuits, our work, our family, our children, money, the pursuit of pleasure, politics, our tribe, whatever it may be. And what I love about what he would say, and has since passed away, but he would say that the minute that we do that and build our lives on anything other than centering around the God who made us and is worthy of all that we are, because he's loved us fully in all that we are, is that we begin to slip into what's called idolatry, right? And so that's a kind of a big thing through the Old Testament and in the Bible and then in the New Testament. And he would talk about how when we do that, the affections of our heart gravitate towards something other than him. And that's when we tend to become tribal, or that's when we tend to take politics, which God created and can use for good, but it tends to go over to the side of harm, right? Isolation from other people, name calling, extreme polarization, etc. And so he called, and it really changed my life in my mid-20s, called back to, if we place Jesus at the center of what we do, and now we're talking about those who would say that they're followers of Jesus. Okay, so I just want to kind of speak to that audience for a moment.
But to pause for a second, because there's what the state of the city is not purely it's about basically something beyond yourself in terms of a creator in general, but you're not saying it has to, am I correct? I mean, obviously you're Christian, I'm Catholic, but you're saying that people can benefit this from any perspective. Is that correct?
Oh, for sure. You mean what I'm sharing right here?
Yeah, what you're sharing here, and then also from the state of the city and
Great question. Yeah. So I'll finish that thought and then I'll come back to what you were saying, but most certainly. So when we begin to build our lives on an identity, like any of those things that I just mentioned, the moment that they start to falter, and so let's just come to politics for a minute, but the moment they start to falter, whatever that foundation is, we tend to kind of feel the sand sort of, so to speak, slipping out from under our feet. Politically speaking, as an example, if I build my identity around whether I'm a Democrat or a Republican or, moderate, and the political scene isn't necessarily going my way, I all of a sudden feel vulnerable. And I feel like I have to go into a defensive posture. And I have to defend my kind of stance or my political perspective or policy preference against yours. And then it's no longer that we have to come back to what you posed, a shared humanity, and that our really sense of togetherness is in the dignity of who we are created by God, and that we have we have given value in that. But now I'm finding my value in other things, and so in that particular case in politics, and that's just where our value becomes sort of a bit faulty or fragile, potentially even fractured. And I think that's where you see, culturally speaking, where we're at. We're fractured in many ways because we're building our identity around something other than the fact that we're fully loved by God in Christ. So to come to the State of the City project, just kind of to make this big leap out of what I shared about my past, the State of the City project we set up as an easy entry space for everyone who calls the Omaha Metro home to get in the game of seeing their city flourish. And we can speak about that for sure. But we tried to create a place where people can link arms around the mental well-being of the people in their city, the well-being of young people. We imagine a city where every child reaches their full potential, to see every neighbor matter and thrive, and then also to see our local churches or places of worship thrive in the city.
So I love, first of all, I love what you're talking about when you build your identity around Jesus or the Lord, or God, right? For whatever that identity is built around, it's actually quite comforting. And this is what I've learned over years as well, is, like I said, is I do generally feel a pull toward a separate identity. And it is when that shifts, it's comforting for me to realize no, that's not my identity. It's still a battle. 43 years into this, it's still a battle, but I feel like for the most part, it's a battle that I tend to win a little bit, because I do feel like I'm relatively centered around around the Lord and around my identity being with the Lord. But how do you get people who don't have that foundation, right? So that's obviously where you have the churches.
Yep.
We've got a big city, a lot of people with beliefs or lack of beliefs. How do we get those people kind of under the same realm, moving in that same direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you've got to find the common place of agreement, or like a common denominator upon which we can all say, yes, that. As an example, one of the things we did in the State of City project to really develop that resource was we had individual one-on-one conversations with over 500 neighbors across the metro in every region of the city. So we actually sent out a team of 100 volunteers, and we listened to neighbors with 5 key questions. What do you love about your neighborhood? What do you wish would change? You know, how long have you lived here? How could a caring community make a difference? And so we listened to them and got these common themes back. Themes such as, we desire greater connectivity in our neighborhoods. Well, for me, that represents a value structure of a person who would call Omaha home. Actually, I think it's deeply rooted in our humanity, but we can all agree on that in our city.
Is that different from other cities?
You know, I didn't do the 500 interviews in other cities. I would say not. I would say I don't think that it is. I think these are common threads of humanity. But we at least know anecdotally from what our neighbors told us in Omaha that it's true of this place that we call home. Okay. So we tried to, in that project, really hang our hats on that. But I think you and I, if you traveled a bit, you'd find that those are actually kind of common cries or echoes of the human heart, right?
Yeah.
So this desire for connectivity. But I mean, we heard things like people saying, I wish I knew my neighbors more. I wish I could come outside more and interact with us. I wish we had block parties. I wish the older people would take interest in the young. I wish the younger people, I'd love to see them outside so we can just see that there's life and vibrancy in the neighborhood. And there's this great joy people have in seeing humanity interact. So we say connectivity. The second thing is people had a strong desire to see an improvement of, we label cleanliness, but it's this desire for order. There's, in the human heart, there's just this desire to see ugly things become pretty, brown things become green, dilapidated things become put together. And that was just, we heard that from neighbor after neighbor after neighbor. You know, potholes be fixed. Can we get a kind of a, you know, shout out in Omaha for that? And then the third thing we heard was this desire to place a deep value on the lives of children, young people. So connectivity, cleanliness, children. Children is, we love seeing the young people in the streets. We wish we had more after school programs. We wish there were more playgrounds where young families could gather, so forth and so on. And so what we do, the reason I mentioned that is you asked the question, where do we find kind of common ground? And I think what we did is we said, where are the places where we find common ground? And let's start there. And one of the big things that we're celebrating, and if they happen to listen in, we just love is our partnership with Omaha Public Schools. And that all started on a relationship that grew with Lisa Utterback, who is kind of the right hand of Dr. Matthew Ray. And we just found this sense of commonality in our stories, valuing the lives of young people and desiring to see them reach their full potential. And that's the space, regardless of faith perspective of either of us, that's the space where we found common alignment. I remember sitting up in our city planner's office that outlooks kind of to the west over Midtown. So Dave Fanslow was just a wonderful guy. And I remember us just sitting up on the 19th floor, just dreaming about what could happen in the city together as they experienced just an inflow of capital for the development of things like housing or infrastructure or urban development. And I just remember us saying, like, yeah, we all desire to see every neighbor in the city, to see our city thrive and grow and create space where people can kind of live their best life. And so I think that's where you have to begin. And Chris, you said something earlier that I just want to mention for a moment. I think it really does start with a posture of listening and just saying, hey, tell me what matters to you. Tell me what you love. Tell me what you're celebrating. Tell me where you're, as you get to know people more, tell me where you're hurting. And as we share our hurts, celebrations, joys, struggles, I think there we find a commonality. And out of that, we can kind of emerge with a sense of togetherness.
It's such a big vision to think about what, like, if we built an ideal Omaha, what's that going to look like? It can be kind of daunting because I'll tell you, Jed, like my neighborhood, in our circle, in a small microcosm of our neighborhood, and then the bigger neighborhood that kind of surrounds St. Wenceslas, I'll tell you, like, I don't know that. I mean, I think, man, this is an amazing place. It's a really amazing place. Like, I think about, like, when I was growing up, I lived in LeBeau West, which is like 156th and Harrison, right by. I mean, there was only dirt roads and cornfields around, but we would play on our circle, and we'd go out, the kids, you know, every single night until sundown, maybe even later, and our parents would trust the other parents on the circle to discipline us if needed, to look after us if needed. They would also trust that we were going to be with the people that were around, and we've been really blessed that that's what our neighborhood is like right now. And so I think that's what every neighborhood should be like, and it is that way. Like in our circle, there's 8 homes in our circle. There's a couple older couples. One guy is 92, and his daughter and her husband live across the street. They've raised their kids. Their kids are grown. But then outside of those 2 homes, if you split up the other 6, I think there's 30 kids. 30 kids. Now some of them have grown. Some of them are about ready to get married in the next couple months. But for the most part, there's 30 kids that have grown up on this circle that I've known over the last 10 years. And it's awesome. My sister lives down the street. So our kids play with kids that they go to school with that are in the neighborhood. And I just think, like, every community should have that. Yeah. And it shouldn't be. So what do you think about, like, when you think about and I'll tell you, a lot of it is that we all go to St. Wenceslas, right? We all go to Mass together. We share a common belief system. We share a common vision, generally speaking, and a common purpose. Why do you think that my perception is that that's not achievable everywhere? I feel like there's something really special here. Maybe that it's not achievable, but it's not common. Yeah. Why isn't it more common? When you talk
I would
to
agree
people?
with you that I would agree with you that it's less common than it used to be. I'm actually delighted to hear that you're actually experiencing with your children what you experienced as a young man, right? I mean, what a gift.
Yeah, it's such a blessing.
I think it'd be interesting to if you look at it as a recipe for great neighboring. You know, I'd love to hear you talk for a minute on what are some of the key ingredients. Do you want to share that? I mean, you shared some of it, a common faith.
Yeah.
Out on the streets together, there's 30 kids. But if you look at a couple of the ingredients that have retained that sense of togetherness in your cul-de-sac, what do you think are some of those pieces that make the sauce sing, so to speak?
Yeah, I think part of it is a trust among parents. You know, if my kids are running around, at the guy, any other kids' homes, I generally trust that the parents are kind of looking after them, that they know, and I trust that they're going to be, you know, if my kids, you know, get out of line, they're going to let me know about it, and they're going to get my kids back in line. I think you made another comment. You know, we were maybe 5-6 years ago, we were more intentional about doing this more regularly, but we still have like a progressive dinner every 6 months with all the adults in our cul-de-sac that, we'll go from having cocktails at somebody's house, and then the next person will have appetizers, the next person will have dinner, and the next person will have dessert. And I think that keeps us together. We'll just, you'll be outside and you'll be grabbing the mail and you think, I got to get back in and do more work. But then you wind up having a conversation with one of the neighbors for a half hour. Yep. And sometimes it's politics, and sometimes it's faith, and sometimes it's, what the kids are doing. My son and daughter that are both in high school are running state cross country this week. So you can get me sidetracked on that really easily. So I don't know. I think that's part of it. My sister, like I said, my sister's in the neighborhood. So, having fires in the backyard, letting the kids run around, and there's a creek. I'll tell you this. I think having creeks by your neighborhood is like amazing. Letting kids get into a little bit of trouble, having to build something that like they probably shouldn't build because there might be floodwaters or, something. I mean, just like let them do something in how would you describe that? Maybe in an unorganized fashion that lets them make mistakes. Make small mistakes. Yep. I think all that kind of stuff plays into it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. My mind, it just brings me so much joy, Chris, to hear you say this, because I think that people, I call it like, and you can imagine this, I call it like stirring up their imagination for what can be. Like we all of us need our imagination sort of reinvigorated for what is possible. As you were sharing that, we moved from this little neighborhood just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and we had this wonderful home, and similar to a cul-de-sac. We live in a cul-de-sac now. Even many of our kids have grown, but we lived on this cul-de-sac with young kids. Man, we had 2 older boys, 3 younger girls, and our home was wild. I mean, there was always something happening. It was always like on the edge. We were skiers, so we would say we always kind of live out over our skis. Sometimes that went really well. Sometimes it went off the rails. Had great relationships with our neighbors that we built over the years. And I remember one time that I'm going to tell when we were moving back here to Omaha, which is where my wife's family lives, which is sort of what drew us back. And I was sharing with one of our neighbors who was a retired Navy antenna operator, probably in his 70s. His name's Dexter and Barry. And I remember telling him, like, hey, we're going to be moving. We've become quite good friends. And I recall, like, in that moment, I'd never seen him cry. And he started to cry just a little bit. Now, we're not that great, so he didn't cry full on, but he just had this moment. And he said, that's the worst news I could ever hear. Now, I would have thought by how crazy our family was, and we had our times, man. We had our moments of glory and our moments of madness, that he'd be like, wow, a little more quiet in the neighborhood would be good. But I think what he missed was that presence in the front yard. And you've just described that. In my driveway, by the creek, with my neighbors. What's the common denominator in that? I think that we've opened our lives to one another. I think that we've said we're going to live outside as much as we're going to live inside. I think that there's this great thing about inviting others in for a progressive dinner, for times around the bonfire, for opening up our lives to one another as parents to say, hey, you and I have a common vision for our kids, that we have great dreams for them. So let's hold them to that together and not let them go too far, off the rails. And so there's just this great encouragement that you're experiencing. And as I hear that, I think what we've done is we've opened up our lives to those around us. I do think, and it actually ties to something we shared a little bit earlier, Chris, that in a world that's polarized and in a world where there's just a tension on the streets, and there's sort of conflict and disunity based upon what tribe I'm a part of, or political party I belong to, or what church or parish I go to, or what my particular perspective is on, or maybe I've just backed away from that completely and I'm a very private, closed-off person. There's this tendency to just live with a guarded posture. And so we don't let people come too close. And I think that actually is what leads to the breakdown of genuine community in spaces like you've described. The reason you're not experiencing that is someone or someone's had the courage to kind of take a deep breath and to invite people in enough to see if you can trust them. Obviously, I want to give that bit of a caveat.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
not everyone in our world can be trusted. We're not saying go through a party and invite them into your home for absolute strangers tonight. But as you learn to trust those around you, then you learn to trust a little bit more, and then you begin to experience deep joy with one another. And you learn that sometimes it's actually better to live outside your home than inside, except for January and February, in Nebraska. And so it's just rich. Your life actually becomes richer and more meaningful when just everything you've described there. So I'm encouraged by you. My message to those, especially, we actually talk about in the book, we have a whole section called Flourishing Neighborhoods. Our dream is to activate 36,000 followers of Jesus to seek the well-being of their neighborhoods with those very things: presence, hospitality, generosity, because we believe those are parts of the kind of secret sauce. So the rhythms of Jesus that create a deeper sense of community and actually lead to things like connectivity, cleanliness, safety, lifting up of the young people and the next generation in our lives. So that is a part of our dream within Reach. Yeah.
Cooper Vision and the AOA have joined forces in a groundbreaking initiative to transform how optometrists treat children with myopia. The Myopia Collective aims to unite our profession and its allies to challenge the status quo and elevate the standard of care for children with myopia. Everyone is invited to become a member of the collective. By joining, you pledge to act in slowing childhood myopia progression. Membership includes regular updates and information about the collective's efforts, access to educational opportunities and resources, and insights from the ambassador optometrists who advocate for community policy and changes supporting the collective's mission. Click the link in the show notes to join the collective today. One of the challenging things with patients is that when they invest in a really high quality pair of glasses and customized lenses, occasionally it can be difficult to keep those lenses clean, scratch-free, and smudge-free. Now, we have the ability with Crizal Sapphire HR lenses to offer our patients a best-in-class anti-reflective coating that is also resistant to scratches, smudges, and deposits. This means that patients spend more time enjoying clear and comfortable vision and less time caring for their lenses. So remember that you can provide patients with the best in quality, best in class, transparency, clarity, durability, and UV protection in a single Crizal coating. If you want to learn more about Crizal Sapphire HR, contact your Essilor account executive or visit essilorpro.com/Crizal. Yeah, I think, so one of the things that, because you brought this up, obviously you have to get to know people, and people have, you start to trust people a little bit more. It wasn't built in a day, right? We've lived here for 10 years, and I think most of the other people have been over. There's our neighbors just next door to us have lived here for probably 15 or 16 years. The ones to the other side are 7 years. Then we've got, maybe 6, and another one that's like 8. So like we've been around for a while. And so it's not just formed right overnight, but how do you, so I never felt like I was intentionally trying to build this community. It sort of happened, although I don't think it happened just out of nowhere. But one of the things I've found recently is, and I'm thinking about this a lot, especially with some of the disagreements that people can have within their tribes. Have you ever heard of F3?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever been?
I've never run up a hill in Memorial Park.
Do you want to come with me sometime?
One day I will. I have a morning routine that I'm very rigid about, but I will join you.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I got to get Ted out too, because I'll text both of you and we'll figure out a time that we can all meet. But anyway, so there's a lot of stuff, a lot of the principles that you're talking about. This is obviously just for men, and but in general, I've found that sometimes I'm asking questions to people. I just want to know more information about why they think what they think, and what they think. And what I've realized is, in many cases, I need to win their hearts before they can even share their minds with me. And it's not like I'm trying to win their minds necessarily, but I can be more intellectual, and that makes me less able to connect. I think where people are defensive because they're thinking I'm trying to win an argument, as opposed to just trying to learn more about who that person is and why they think the way they think. But you and Ted aren't like that at all. Not that you're not intelligent. That's not what I mean. It's just that I get a sense immediately that it's easy for you to connect to the human, to their hearts. So how do I become better at that?
Yeah, number one, thanks for even asking. I want to come hang out at your neighborhood next time you have a bonfire and learn from you. But
I got to have both you guys over.
Let me just speak about Ted for a minute and brag on him just for a bit. And I'm learning about Ted a lot. If you spend time with Ted, Ted is remarkably hospitable. So he will invite you, whether it's out to his golf club or to his home for a great meal. You may know him as Chef Blue Jay, or over a drink, or he's always at Vidlax on Wednesday mornings and Friday mornings. Yep. Are you there for one of those breakfasts?
Before F3, I was there. I think I probably spent 6 years on Friday mornings with Ted and Bush and lots of guys.
So
I need to get back. I keep saying that. I need to get back.
Yeah, you got to get back for Vidlax. I hear that they just released a new breakfast era, so at least back for that.
Okay.
But Ted demonstrates, when I think of the person of Jesus and what really attracted me to Jesus initially and still continues to do so, is if you kind of even read through the Gospel of Luke, there's this book written called Eating Your Way Through the Gospel of Luke, because it seems in the Gospel that Jesus is always at a meal, going to a meal, or leaving a meal. So there's something about the way he shared space around a table. And the guy who wrote this, his argument is that, food or the meal is sort of the common denominator that's transcultural, trans-time. And all of us want to connect around that space that we share and we share in, and we generally speaking 3 times a day. And those are the places where we connect. And Ted demonstrates that really well. I think he's very Jesus-like in that. Now, I'm not propping him up to the Jesus kind of stratosphere, but I am saying that he reflects Jesus to me. And I just love that about him. So so number 1, he invites people in. Number 2, he asks great questions. You know this. If you're around Ted, he'll not only know you and your name, and if you have a spouse, his or her name, but he'll know something of your story, what matters to you. Maybe it's your children, maybe it's your job, maybe it's your hobby, maybe it's the things that you love. For you here, Chris, I hear you fly airplanes. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we can talk about that another time. My son Brooks flew airplanes for a little while, and so we just have a deep love for flying in our family. Yeah. And so there's, he'll find that about us, and we just love. I'm learning this from Ted, and we share in this kind of trait. We love it. We just love to learn people's stories. You've already talked about this. I'm guessing that if I were to ask you, hey, tell me the names of your 8 closest neighbors, and tell me just something that matters to them, something that brings them joy, you could tell me that about the people in your cul-de-sac. I think that something that's been lost in our culture is not only do we not know things that matter deeply to the lives of those around us, that could be in our neighborhood or in our workplace or the spaces like F3 where we frequent, but oftentimes we don't even know people's names. We're getting ready to have a speaker named Dave Runyon. He wrote a book called The Art of Neighboring. I think it should be on every human's reading list because it's built on this premise that there is an art to neighboring, to being a great neighbor. And what he has found after interviewing over 600,000 churched people is that very few people know all 8 names of their 8 closest neighbors. In fact, I think the statistics are something like only 10% of churched people know all 8 names of their 8 closest neighbors. So when I look at that, I'd say we've lost the art of learning people and learning their story. I think it starts with knowing their names, and then I think it leads to knowing their joys, with time their dreams. Then you know them well enough to know their fears or the things that bring them, pain, and we all have those in our lives. And then you can become an encourager. Then you can seek ways to serve and build up, come alongside, bear burdens in life. And I think that's just kind of the art of neighboring. So for Ted and I, we do love that. Every time we often share stories of people we've met and golf rounds we've had and meals we've shared, and we just get to enjoy that. Our whole Within Reach team loves that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's if I'm working on anything internally right now, it's trying to get to know somebody first without because I'm just naturally interested, but sometimes my questions aren't the kind of questions that are naturally like people will want to respond to unless they're ready for it, unless they believe that I have their best interest at heart. And sometimes they don't believe that right away because they don't know me. And and so that's a me problem. And anyway, it's just something I've been thinking about and trying to do better on. So I would think that
I
a lot of that,
appreciate you.
No, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, Chris, and I think all of us are, growing in this area, and we need a few people around us like yourself or a Ted or someone else to really encourage us on. We need people in our lives who we're seeing do this well, because none of us have arrived. And there's always a next space that we can go in, taking an interest in the lives of people around us. And so we're in this together. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I guess, I want to be respectful of your time, but I think I want to kind of wrap or actually apply that, because I think it gets at the underlying challenge that could be present in, you want to sit down with the Archbishop and he's got a pretty full dance card, I would suspect. My oldest daughter lives at the Newman Center, so he's now living at the Newman Center while they're renovating his quarters.
Sure is.
So anyway, but like how, I mean, I would guess that there's probably, you're met occasionally with the idea of what I'm proposing to you is like, well, I don't know, Jed. I mean, I've heard of Jed, but does he really have our best interest at heart? Is there something else that's going on? So I guess pretty much my last question is, have you experienced that in this project? And if so, I mean, you've already sort of outlined how you get around it, but how do you build? Is there a way that you build that has worked, or an instance that has occurred where you've said, okay, we're not gonna get right through right away, but we can show our hearts by doing other things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I just want to say, I'm so glad your daughter's at the Newman Center. I've gotten to know George quite well, George Lucas. I mean, that's the epic of all names, right?
Yeah, isn't it?
The creator of Star Wars. Yeah, and yet our own Archbishop, retired now. But, I'll just take George as an example. Father Lucas, who, invited several of us around the table and shared his life with us and his stories with us and his wins in life and some of his struggles, life and leadership. And he's very honest about the journey of leading the Archdiocese of Omaha toward becoming a church that really focuses on people who have yet to discover life in Jesus, that they're loved deeply by their Maker, their Heavenly Father. And he has been very vulnerable in sharing that journey with us. As we've entered into the space, let's just kind of stay on that theme for a minute, and then I can apply it to a few other areas. But as we've entered into the space as a network of really building kind of what I think are vibrant relationships, and yet I still feel like we're in the first inning with the Archdiocese and several pastors and parishes around the city. Certainly for some in the network, that could lead to a place of misunderstanding. Some who hold, I think, in my opinion, too tightly to their denomination or perhaps their preference or their upbringing, but don't see that the common denominator in that, if you're a Protestant or if you're Catholic, and I tend to kind of shed the Protestant word, so I just say non-Catholic, but that we don't understand.
I was going to call you that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, please do. I'm like, what are we protesting? I don't know. In heaven, we're not going to protest anything, so let's drop it now. But we're running after Jesus together. And Father Lucas has been just a great encouragement in our lives of a deep love for Jesus and a deep love for brothers and sisters. So I try to learn from people like him. Dan Andrews, I mean, if your daughter's at the Newman Center, I mean, Dan Andrews is an incredible leader and a great encourager in the way that he models that as well. Interesting you say that. I was actually in a conversation today where there was some disagreement, not around that particular topic, but in some other areas of the city. And so I'll kind of come over here and apply it. And typically where the disagreement happens is when someone thinks we should give a greater investment, energy, resource to one particular area of the city or one particular need within the city. And so as we came around the table to try to understand that more fully, and I still think we have several conversations to go, I think what brings me deep joy in the middle of that is that as followers of Jesus together, we can link arms around the most important thing, which is our faith in Christ, that we're fully accepted by him, fully loved by him. And then we can find paths forward in the midst of our disagreements. But I definitely want to get at the heart of the question that you're asking. So if you can kind of like reframe that a little bit for me to kind of take us where we need to go. I want to honor that. So with Father George Lucas and this other conversation, I want to say those things do exist where there can be opportunity for tension, but kind of what are you hoping, what's the question you're asking?
I'm just trying to, I maybe this is more just insightful for me, and you did kind of answer it before I asked the question, but ultimately it's like, let's say you identify this area where you see an opportunity for growth. You see an opportunity for community connection, but they don't know you yet, and they don't really know a lot about the story. So how do you go about telling the story or building the story with them in a way that's not threatening or not like, hey, I'm going to come over and take over your stuff, and it's going to be like I want it. Yeah, I mean that's the only thing. I mean, I think that's again in my realm when I reflect on like how could I do things better. Clearly, you've built a ton of bridges. I think I built some bridges, but there's some other things that I could probably build bridges better. I mean, just like not even just. I mean, obviously in my community, but
Yep.
even specifically in my profession or
Yep.
my relationships within my profession, or even my relationships with my patients. I mean, for the most
Yeah.
part, I feel like I've got a really good relationships with my patients, but sometimes like you're coming in on a brand new patient and I'm just the guy that they found that had good Google reviews and, somebody maybe recommended him, but they don't really know. They don't
Yeah.
know my heart.
Yep.
So I don't know. I'm just trying to see,
Yep.
trying to get a little bit more insight there.
That's good. Yeah, great. Thank you for reframing that. And that helps me a lot. Let me give you just a little nugget that we're in the middle of learning. It actually began in the spring of 2020. I was doing huddle groups within reach of some of our network pastors at the time. Maybe at the time there were maybe 30 network partners. Today we have, maybe 60 to 80 local churches, but well over 100 partners in the network. And I would attribute that growth to one conversation in one huddle group I had at Love Church's 180 Center on 180th and Pacific. And I was sitting with a leader and we're asking kind of what they love about the network, what they'd love to see change. And this is a guy who's just become a great friend and kind of encourager in my life. But he said, Jed, I need to know, and I'll kind of leave the name of his church out of it, but he probably wouldn't mind if I mentioned, but he said, I need to know, does Within Reach exist to serve us, or do you see that we exist to serve Within Reach? And for me, that was sort of a aha moment to say, from this day on, I think it was, let's say June, July of 2020, from this day on, Within Reach will take the posture of existing to serve the city. Now, I say that sounds very high and lofty, and I want to be cautious and say we don't always get that right. But we have a commitment to standing at the space where we can serve and kind of accelerate good works and good work in the city. And so what that has led to is in this growing network, when I come alongside a partner like, let's say some of our marketplace partners, what we're listening when we sit down with them at the table is to say, how can we actually enhance your leadership ability and get you connected to other leaders so that you're growing, thriving as a leader, maybe answering some of the questions that, Chris, you've been asking through this time. I may not give a lot to you in terms of if you're a financial investor or a contractor or a physician or an eye doctor, but I do have the ability to create space where you can network with other like-minded professionals or leaders, maybe in and around your sector of leadership. But in that, what we're doing is we're saying, how can we serve you in the work you're doing, kind of to lift you up? And so that posture, there's a book called For, and F-O-R, and it was written by a guy named Jeff. Kind of, I'll send it to you later. Jeff For. I bet you'll find it if you Google that.
I'll find it on Audible.
And he worked for Chick-fil-A for years. And he really describes what is the underpinnings of the culture at Chick-fil-A, which is very much a customer first, mentality and value. In fact, that's one of their core values. So it's this idea that we exist for the customer. And we just determined that over 4 years ago, that everything we would do would not be answering the question, what can our partners do for us? But how can we really lift up their story, tell their story of what they're doing well in the city? And we find that as we do that, I think there's more of an attractiveness to the network because that sets culture and people want to be around that and they find that they're valued and that there's meaningful contributions taking place and that they're inspired, their imagination is growing. Now, certainly, we don't always get it right. Sometimes people are skeptical of that. Sometimes it takes people a little time to maybe get to the party. And sometimes people choose maybe to say that's not necessarily for us. But all of that's okay. We believe in that posture. And so we have this internal value that says we give our guests our best. So I'm kind of letting you into a little bit of the sauce of Within Reach. And so we just always want to have that posture of honor to give our guests our best. And that's where we kind of serve the network that way. And it's working, I think.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's that pastor posed a wonderful question to you that I think we ought to ponder often. I mean, even just in my practice, I've thought about the thing I've been really focused on recently, and is I am there to be responsible for the totality of the patient that's in front of me. Mm-hmm. And ultimately it means I've got to serve them. I've got to serve them as, in their best interest. Mm-hmm. And, I think saying those things in different ways with constant reminders that don't become dull over time or faded because you're ignoring them. I'm always searching for different reminders of that. And I think for sure our conversation tonight has provided that for me. So tell me a little bit, I guess, Jed, I'll leave this with you. What, if people want to look more at what you're doing, obviously in Omaha, or reach out if they want insights from some of the perspective you might have and help connecting with other people doing similar things in other cities, where can people find you?
Yeah, and then I want to give you one note of encouragement before we get off, if I can have like 60 seconds.
We can start there if you want. Please encourage all the way. I need all your encouragement. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to encourage you, Chris, with how good of a job you're doing. This is an intentional plug. I did not connect. Our family didn't connect to exclusively eye care because of Ted. I think my wife Googled. We were one of the Googlers. We needed an eye doctor close to our daughter's school, and you were really close, right? And so we come in, and then we learned via Ted that, hey, we have this kind of common denominator there.
That's cool.
I didn't meet you until I brought my daughter Lydia in because she had sort of this eye infection post an eye exam there. And you took care of her and gave her the medicine that she needed. But it was the way that you and your team cared for her. And then you sent a personal message, I believe, the next day, and just said, hey, how's Lydia? If there's anything you need, let us know. And I just want to encourage you and say, as a person that we didn't really know each other, and I think that was the first time we'd said like, oh, we know Ted, that was our first connection. Yeah. I'm confident the way your staff had cared for her and provided that ongoing personal message of care, for me, reveals that you guys are doing a great job. So let me just encourage you in that. We were really impressed. And Lydia was impressed. She was encouraged. That you guys care for her that way, and she's 11. So,
awesome.
In terms of Within Reach, we published this resource, the State of the City Project. The whole project really existed to just inform the city of what is true of the city through the lens of research. We actually partnered with a group called the Barna Group that partners and works closely with Harvard Human Flourishing Program, and so we were looking at human flourishing from a number of different spaces, and we report on all of that research along with Harvard in the project and what we discovered in partnership with Barna. And so it's just this really fun research that out of it comes for us this 10-year vision in the area of mental health, school partnerships, and investment into our neighborhoods in our city all across the metro, and then in our churches, because we do believe that our city's at our best when the church is at its best. But the church, you and I both know this, thrives when its leaders thrive. And when its leaders falter, the church falters. And when that happens, a lot of people get hurt. And certainly that's happened in some of our lives. But we want the church and the city to thrive. And so you can find out more about us at withinreach.com. We're in the process of a really significant kind of rebrand and platform right now that will actually become a storytelling platform, to where when great things are happening around the city, we want to be the first to share it. In fact, we want to become what we call champion storytellers. And so you can learn more about us right now at withinreach.com, and certainly you can get access to the book there as well. Awesome.
Jed Mullenix, thanks so much for coming on, man. This was great.
Yeah, it was great, Chris. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you so much.
Let me. All right, I'll see you later. I'll do an introduction, but I'll let you hop off. And thanks for your time. And I'll figure out a time that we can get together and break bread, and it'd be a lot of fun. I'll cook for Chef Pluge, and you sometime.
Have you ever eaten with him? Like, has he?
Yeah, man. He's fantastic.
Yeah, that guy's a blast. So,
yeah.
All right, man. Hey, awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate you a lot.
You're welcome.
Look forward to the next conversation, Chris.
That sounds great. I'll see you later. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and our YouTube channel, both linked in the show notes. Now, here's something exciting. We're giving away a 1-year subscription to Comprehensive Optometry Simplified. All you have to do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, take a screenshot, and email it to me at questions@icodeeducation.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. We'll be selecting a winner on December 15th, so don't miss your chance to get access to this valuable resource. Thanks again for listening. I can't wait to see your reviews.